back here again with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And then today we're going to start a new project, and we're actually going to make some leather cuffs. They'll be laced, and they're going to be for a child. So this child is 5, 6 years old, and they want some leather cuffs. And normally I make these Western style, but on these he wants them like pirate style. So we're going to do a little different design on the cuff and a pattern. Today that's what we're starting with, is the actual pattern. So we'll measure everything out, put it down on paper, get it cut out so we have something solid to go to when we start cutting on our leather. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so to get started, I've got a piece of 22 by 26, I believe it is, white poster board, just 50 cents at Dollar Tree. It makes excellent pattern material because you can keep these and they last and last. You use them over and over again. And what I've done is, since I don't have the youngster here that I'm making these cuffs for, basically what I've done is I've measured my wrist and took an inch off of that measurement, and this is a pretty good size 6-year-old, so you know, that makes a huge difference. But I would say, and I want him to be able to wear these for quite a while, so that's why I'm going to lace them. So that's going to give him some room to grow and still wear these cuffs. So I took an inch out of that. So mine measured 8 inches, so I'm going to make that 7 inches. Normally I would make 7, 8-inch long cuffs to come from my wrist all the way up to below my elbow. But because of the shortness of the child's arm, I'm going to make them 6 inches. So they'll be 6 inches from the wrist up to the arm. And then around the fatty part of the arm, or the muscle part of the arm, mine measured 9.5 inches. So I'm going to make that 8.5 inches. I'll keep it an inch smaller, just like I did down here on this measurement. Again, since they're not going to be snapped closed, they're going to be drawn up and laced. That's going to give room for that to close tighter, and also as he grows, he can expand those and wear those for a longer period of time. So first thing I'm going to start out with, really we only need one pattern because we're making a matching pair, one for each arm. So I'm going to start out with 7 inches down to the wrist, and what I'm going to do is, this is 8 inches on the square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square that off at the top of that, and I'm going to let's see, I have 8.5 inches at the top, so this will be too small. I better go this way and make sure I have plenty of material. So all I'm doing is squaring this poster board to make sure that I have my measurements square. So I have to have something to go off of, and I like to do it from the center of a point. So I'm going to continue this line down, and then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll measure, and that's 12 inches. the width of that is 12. I'll mark it at 6. Come down here, do the same thing. I'll mark it at 6 inches. So that's the center. And then I'll double check, see what we got here as far as, I said I needed 8.5 inches, and we're down plenty far. So let's go ahead and I will make the center mark dashed. And all I'm doing is making fairly long lines, but I want to make sure that I know that's my center. So those lines are dashed. You can see, a little hard to see at that angle. So I'll start up here as this being, and I'll write wrist up here, and then when I get down here I'll write arm. But my wrist was 7 inches, so I'm gonna put that square. I feel much comfortable measuring with my stainless steel straight ruler. So half of 7 inches is 3.5. So I'll put 3.5 on my center mark, mark it at 0, and mark it at 7 inches. I'll come down 6 inches, and I'm going to add a little more to this. I'll show you that here in a minute. But here's my 6-inch mark, and then that's where I'll mark for my 8.5 inch for the arm. I need to square this off again, so let me put the square back down. I'm just making a light line across there so that I know where to put my measurements for my 8.5. So half of 8.5 is 4.25. Find 4.25 on my ruler, put it on the center mark, mark it at 0 and 8.5. So now I can take a straight edge, doesn't matter what type of straight edge, as long as it's perfectly straight. I'll use this stainless steel ruler, and I'll connect those marks from the top, my 7-inch marks, to my 8.5-inch marks. So from the top of the poster board down to those 8.5-inch marks on that squared line, and you can see now how it's starting to come together. And with that white poster board and that bright light, LED light, it's really bright. So what I said about I was going to do something a little bit different, all I want to do is just add just a little bit. Remember I said he wanted to have a pirate look to it, so I'm going to take some French curves as soon as I can get them off of this pegboard, and I'm going to look at these, and they're just plastic French curves that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I think I've got a whole package of them real cheap of different kinds, and all I want to do is kind of lay one of these out and see what this looks like if I take it from where it's going to end right here at 6 inches on his arm, and then curve it up to a point. So on the top, where it's on the top of the arm, instead of just being a round cuff, it'll come up where it ties under here, and then it'll actually scroll around and come up to a point and then go back down. So it'll just give it a lot more character. So I'm going to take this French curve, put it on the point over here at my 8.5 mark, and this is not very dramatic, by the way, and I can show that to you, I hope. You can see that line right there is not that dramatic, but it does come from where it would have been just squared off up to that center mark. So it is going to have, and I won't make that a perfect point, it'll be a little rounded there. And then I'll do the same thing to the other side. So I'll make sure I have the right one. What I'll do is I'll just flip it over, move it to the other side until those line up. I'll take my pen, do the same thing. Now you can see where those two meet on that center line right here. And like I said, I'll make that a little rounded right there instead of having a point on it. I'll just round that end off just a hair. And I can probably do that on my pattern with just some small round object that I have. Let me grab this. I use this a lot. And I'll just match those two lines. And then round that off. And all that's going to do is give that not such a pointed edge. As that rolls over, it'd be more of a rounded, soft edge. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and cut this pattern out. And I want to mark, as I said, I want to mark this as my arm. And then let's go ahead and let's cut this pattern out and get rid of all this excess material. And what I'll do is I'll just cut it on that squared line and then across here. And I can set this excess piece of poster board aside, and that, as you can see, that really makes it easier to work with. You can see our center line here, and then this is where the wrist is. So let's go ahead, and you can use a straight edge to cut this with. Normally my patterns, once I use a straight edge to draw them out, I don't use a straight edge normally to cut them out. I just follow that line, and that's just because I've had so much practice, I guess. But it does help cutting a straight line if you're using a cutting mat. A self-healing cutting mat seems to help. And then of course this won't be straight, this will be a curved line. So I'll come up follow that all the way around to the other side. And then there's my excess. I'll just push it over to the side, get it out of the way. And there's my pattern with my center mark. This is what I've added. So as you put those cuffs, as you round it like that, you can see what that adds to the top. So instead of that just being straight across right here, now it goes up. And my arm's going to be too big for this, obviously. But you can see how that goes up on the arm a little bit. So it's just adding a little bit to it instead of it being a squared off cuff. And then I am going to also mark this as child's cuff pattern. That way I don't get it mixed up with some of the other patterns I have for cuffs that are for adults or ones I've made in the past. So the next thing I want to do is I want to mark this for my lacing, because we're going to lace these. So I want it marked that is 6 inches. If you remember, the straight part was going to be 6 inches. I think I'll put them in at 3/8 of an inch on center. So the center of the hole will be 3/8. You don't want to get it too close to the edge because you're going to be punching holes in your leather. So you don't want to weaken that leather by getting it too close to the edge. So I'm going to go 3/8 on center with my holes, and I'm going to put those, let me get this one marked, and I'll show you how I'm going to measure those. So there's my 3/8 of an inch from the edge on both sides, because I'll have holes down both sides, and I believe I will make those. I've got 6 inches. I'll start at a 1/2 inch from the bottom or the wrist, and then from there I'll go every inch. And that'll leave me a 1/2 inch from the very top also. So I'll do the same thing from the bottom or the other side, and I'll go up a 1/2 inch, mark it, and then an inch from there. So every one of those marks that I'm putting at an inch is going to end up being a hole for lacing these cuffs. Now I'll take a small punch, and I'll take a hard piece of scrap leather, and see if I can punch the holes in my pattern. And remember, I want it on center. not hitting it very hard, so that's why I'm going back. I might have to clean it out to get my waste piece. I'll turn it over, do the other side the same way. Once you do a couple of them, you kind of get the feel for how hard you need to hit it to get it through that paper compared to leather. So there's my completed pattern. I have all my holes for my lacing. Got my size for the wrist, the top of the arm, the length. I've got my little scrolled edge at the top that adds just a little bit of character to it. So that step is complete. So thanks for coming along today. I appreciate you being here with me, seeing how I develop a pattern for younger child's cuffs, leather cuffs. This will be the pattern that I'll make both of them off of, so both of them will be identical. So come back next week and our video will be cutting out the leather and getting it ready for the cuffs. I'll probably do some a little bit of carving on these also. Not a lot, but I think I want to put a couple of little pirate type things on these just to make them special for him. So come on back next week and check it out. As I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.